I sat there, my body drenched in sweat, heart pounding in my chest, as the sun blazed down on me through the car window. My son's voice echoed in my mind, cold and dismissive as he walked away, leaving me locked inside, helpless. "You'll be fine. Just wait here," he'd said, but I knew better. After everything I had given him, after all the sacrifices, I was just another inconvenience to him. Wait, before we go any further, I gotta ask, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. The heat was already unbearable before the engine stopped. Inside the parked sedan, the air turned thick and sour, like hot plastic and old coffee grounds. Joyce Latham sat in the back seat, her palms resting against her floral skirt, already damp. The doors locked with a mechanical click. The sun glared through the windshield, transforming the interior into a slow-cooking trap. "I'll be 5 minutes," Ethan said, not looking back. "You'll be fine." The doors slammed, and then it was just her and the heat. At first, Joyce stayed calm. She adjusted her sunglasses, wiped her upper lip with a tissue from her purse, and tried to focus on the strip mall storefronts beyond the glass. Her son's pickup truck was wedged crooked in the lot outside a fast food joint she didn't recognize. Bakersfield's August sun was merciless. High noon, cloudless, dry as bone. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. The air stopped moving entirely. Every breath felt borrowed. Sweat clung to her arms, soaking through her cotton blouse. Her skin itched beneath her bra strap. The inside of her mouth was bone dry, her tongue sticking slightly to the roof of it. She tried rolling down the window. Nothing. Power was off. Manual locks had been replaced years ago. Joyce shifted in her seat slowly, her joints aching from the stiffness. The arthritis in her knees screamed as she stretched, but the worst was the heat, pressing, wrapping around her like a wool blanket left in an oven. 15 minutes. Her fingers trembled. She tapped lightly on the glass, then harder. No one looked. Her heart began to thump harder in her chest. Her breath shortened. She pushed her elbow against the window, then used the side of her purse to rap louder, desperate to make someone notice. 20 minutes. Her vision blurred slightly around the edges. She slumped forward, forehead brushing the sticky vinyl of the seat in front of her. It smelled like scorched rubber and old French fries. Her purse slipped to the floor, unnoticed. "Help," she whispered, too hoarse to shout. "Help me." A young man in a Dodgers cap walking by with a toddler slowed. He paused, looked, came closer. His expression shifted from casual to alarmed. Hey, is she okay?" Joyce barely managed to lift her hand, trembling, tapping the glass again. The man didn't hesitate. He shouted to someone behind him, then picked up a tire iron from his trunk. A loud crack tore through the air. Shards of tempered glass exploded outward. The rush of fresh air was almost painful. "Ma'am, stay with me. You okay?" he asked, reaching into the car. Joyce didn't answer. She slumped sideways, dizzy, mouth dry as dust. Another voice joined in, female, sharp. "Call 911. Just as the man helped her out of the back seat, Ethan returned. A paper bag of fries in one hand, soda in the other. "What the hell's going on?" he asked, annoyed. "She was locked in there," the man snapped. "Are you serious? It's like 110 out here," Ethan scoffed. "She's dramatic. She could have opened the damn door. She's fine." Joyce didn't speak. She couldn't. The heat still pressed inside her skull, like it had soaked through her bones. They didn't go to the hospital. Ethan muttered something about wasting time and drove home, the windows now down, wind burning against her flushed skin. When they reached the house, she barely made it to the hallway bathroom. Her knees buckled as she reached for the sink, vomiting into the basin. The bile burned her throat. She gripped the counter. The mirror showed a red face, wet with sweat, pale beneath the surface. Her blouse stuck to her chest like plastic wrap. She turned the faucet, splashed water on her face, and gagged again. Behind her, through the open door, Ethan's voice echoed faintly from the living room. She's fine, just can't handle the heat. But something had cracked inside her. Not just her body, something deeper. And the damage this time wasn't going away. The fluorescent lights in urgent care flickered overhead, humming faintly as Joyce sat on the exam table, clutching the crinkled paper beneath her thighs to keep herself steady. The nurse had just finished taking her vitals, heart rate still high, blood pressure concerning, and disappeared with a clipboard of notes. Joyce's mouth was dry again. The water they'd given her earlier sat half-finished on the side table, still warm. Ethan lounged in the plastic chair across the room, arms crossed, legs stretched, like he was waiting on an oil change. He tapped his foot with dramatic boredom, sighing louder every few minutes. When the doctor walked in, a man in his early 40s with salt and pepper temples and kind eyes, Ethan was already halfway into his version of events. She just got lightheaded. Happens a lot when she doesn't eat, he said with a shrug. She's kind of dramatic. You know how older folks can be. Joyce opened her mouth, but the words stayed lodged behind her tongue. Is that right, Mrs. Latham? The doctor asked, glancing at her gently. She looked away, nodding faintly. Her hands trembled in her lap, not from fear, but from the anger she was swallowing whole. A few minutes later, after the exam and questions and thermometer readings, the diagnosis came back: heat stroke and mild dehydration. The doctor handed Ethan a paper with instructions and a prescription for electrolyte tablets and an anti-nausea med. She'll need to rest, stay out of heat, and hydrate, the doctor explained. And someone should check in every few hours today. Older adults can decline fast after heat exposure. Ethan scanned the page like it was optional reading. We're tight on money right now, he muttered. So unless it's urgent, we'll skip the pharmacy run. Joyce looked at him, eyebrows knitting, but he didn't meet her gaze. Kendra picked her up from urgent care later that afternoon. She barely made it through the sliding doors before she scoffed from the driver's seat. Again, she said, tapping her nails on the wheel. You know, it's starting to feel like you like being the center of attention. Joyce didn't reply. The ride home was quiet, tense, hot again. Kendra refused to use the air conditioning. Joyce cracked the window just enough to feel a breeze. Back home, Ethan disappeared into the garage. Kendra headed for the bedroom, muttering something about needing a nap. Joyce shuffled to her room, each step deliberate, careful. Her limbs still felt heavy. Her chest ached, not in the physical sense, but deeper, as though something inside her had caved inward during the hours she sat boiling in that car. She waited until the house quieted before pulling the floral tin box from the back of her closet. Inside was a slim, hardbound notebook, wrapped in a faded blue ribbon. She sat on her bed and opened it. August 11th. Urgent care, heat stroke. Ethan, dismissive. Kendra, mocking. Refused to pick up meds. Pain in chest, dizzy, still nauseous. No apology, no water. She wrote it slowly, her handwriting neat but sharp. Her fingers ached from the effort, but it helped. It made it real. If they wouldn't remember it, she would. Later that evening, Rhonda stopped by with a container of split pea soup and a glare sharp enough to cut glass. She noticed the yellowing bruises on Joyce's forearms immediately. What happened here? She asked. Joyce shrugged. Just banged into something on the car door. Rhonda frowned, then gently touched the spot above her wrist. Nope, that's a grip bruise. Thumbprint on one side, finger span on the other. Time to start documenting, Joyce. Really documenting. Joyce nodded once, too tired to argue. Rhonda sighed. You keep letting them treat you like this. One day you won't get out of that car. That night, as Joyce sat in the kitchen sipping warm tea, she reached into her purse for her wallet and felt the sinking chill before she even opened it. Debit card missing. She checked again, then heard Ethan's voice from the living room, laughing through a mouthful of chips. Man, gas is ridiculous, he said to no one in particular. Good thing I had her card on me. The sound of the faucet dripping in the kitchen was the only noise in the house when Joyce sat down at the breakfast nook, her tablet resting on the table like a fragile confession. She tapped into her online banking, her fingers stiff from morning arthritis, vision slightly blurred from fatigue. The screen loaded slowly, then revealed a number that stopped her breath mid-inhale. $482.71, labeled under home supplies. Her brow furrowed. She hadn't bought anything except groceries in the past week. She clicked the charge, tracing it to a Shopify transaction. That wasn't home improvement. That was Kendra's boutique. The pastel banner had been on the refrigerator just last week. Grand opening, luxe layers, handcrafted loungewear for elevated women. Joyce remembered it because Kendra had spent 3 days swearing at the sewing machine and blaming everyone else for the crooked hems. She stood slowly, her knees stiff as tree bark. The living room smelled faintly of lavender plug-ins and the tail end of someone's burnt microwave popcorn. Ethan was reclined in the armchair, scrolling his phone like he was mining for gold. A soda can sweating on the table beside him. "Ethan," she said, her voice calm but clear. "Did you use my debit card again?" He didn't look up. "Huh?" "For home supplies. $482. He finally raised his eyes, annoyed. "Yeah, for Kendra's launch. We needed materials, threads, packaging, web hosting. It was a one-time thing. That was nearly $500. He leaned forward, the armchair groaning beneath him. "You live here rent-free. I drive you everywhere. That card? It's called compensation." Joyce stood perfectly still. Her hands didn't tremble. Her face didn't flinch. "I never agreed to that." Ethan scoffed. "God, Mom, it's not like you're destitute. I work. Kendra's trying to build something. All you do is sit in the house and criticize." "I never criticized," Joyce said softly. "I asked a question. Well, if you don't want to contribute, stop acting like this is some 5-star retirement village." He stood and brushed past her, muttering as he went, "You should be grateful." Joyce didn't follow. She returned to the kitchen, sat back down, and pulled out the notebook Rhonda had told her to start using. She flipped to a fresh page. September 2nd. Debit card used without permission. Charge, $482.71. Ethan's justification, compensation, boutique launch. A few hours later, Rhonda dropped by with a basket of ripe avocados and a suspiciously quiet tone. Joyce handed her the tablet, pointing to the charge. Rhonda didn't react immediately. She just took a long sip from her iced tea, set it down and said, "Time to get a real lawyer." Joyce looked up. "Do you know one?" "Dale Ortiz. Clean. Cautious. Doesn't talk down to people. Helped my sister after her son tried to move her into a home and accidentally cleared out her annuity." Joyce nodded. "Can you help me make the call?" By that evening, the appointment was booked. Wednesday, noon. Dale's office was just 2 blocks from the Bakersfield Public Library, a place Joyce hadn't been near since her retirement 10 years ago. The next morning, when Joyce tried to access the Wi-Fi on her tablet to check her remaining account balances, the network name had disappeared. She asked Ethan. He shrugged. Kendra password protected it. Said too many people were using the bandwidth. "I just check email and my account," Joyce said. "You can go to the library," Kendra snapped from the hallway. "That's what people did before Wi-Fi, right?" Joyce didn't reply. She returned to her room and jotted down Wi-Fi restricted. Kendra's doing. She read instead. Reread A Tree Grows in Brooklyn for the 3rd time, not because it was comforting, but because the protagonist always knew when to act. That afternoon, a letter arrived in a plain envelope. No return address, just a seal from the county recorder's office. Joyce opened it slowly, carefully unfolding the document, her fingers stilled. Property ownership update. Parcel number 4873-BK. This letter confirms that your name has been removed from the property title at 1125 Candelaria Drive, Bakersfield, California. Updated owner of record, Ethan Latham. The paper slipped from her hands and fluttered to the floor like a slow-motion betrayal. This wasn't just theft. It was war. The sound of the new mailbox clanging shut made Joyce pause mid-step. It was the second time this week she'd heard it, sharper, hollower. When she walked down the drive, still in her slippers, she saw it in plain white vinyl, freshly mounted and too clean. The name on the side no longer said Latham, Joyce, and Ethan. It simply read, The Lathams. Her name was gone. A pit opened in her chest, slow and deep. She reached for the mail and found a local coupon flyer, 2 envelopes addressed to Kendra, and 1 bill labeled Property Tax Notification. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. The line for owner of record read, Ethan Latham. She walked back inside without a word. Later that afternoon, Joyce sat across from Dale Ortiz in a modest office tucked behind a dry cleaner on Oak Street. Dale wore a checkered button-down and wire-frame glasses, but his demeanor was anything but casual. He didn't interrupt. He didn't smirk. He just listened. He filed a change of title, Joyce said, sliding the document across the desk. I never signed anything. Dale scanned the papers, his brows tightening with each line. This signature here, this isn't yours. No. He tapped the screen with a capped pen. Then that's real estate fraud. Forging someone's consent to transfer property, especially from a living person, is a felony in California. If we can prove this was unauthorized, he's in deep. Joyce reached into her bag and pulled out a slim folder. Inside were notarized copies of the original deed, signed back when she and her late husband purchased the house in 1989. The ink was faded but legible. Her maiden name, his full signature. Dale took the folder and nodded once. This helps a lot. I want to start the reversal process, Joyce said. We will, Dale replied, but you should brace for pushback. Joyce's eyes didn't waver. He's already pushed. By the time she got home, Rhonda was waiting with a shoebox full of old photo envelopes and tax records. Back when I helped you organize the garage last year, Rhonda said, setting the box down. I snapped pics of anything with your name on it, just in case. Inside the box were photos of utility bills from the 1990s, an old snapshot of Joyce holding up the deed after paying off the mortgage, and a picture of the mailbox with her name etched into it beside her husband's. Every little bit counts, right? Rhonda said. Joyce felt a lump rise in her throat, but she swallowed it down. More than you know. That evening, when the house was quiet and the sun had burned itself into a peach-colored sky, Joyce placed a tiny voice recorder beneath the fruit bowl in the kitchen. Rhonda had given it to her, just a cheap model from the pharmacy, small enough to go unnoticed. It clicked on with a faint beep. The next morning, Joyce let it run while she pretended to nap in her room. Ethan came through the back door with a friend. Someone she didn't recognize by voice, but younger, maybe one of his co-workers. Nah, she's slowing down, Ethan said, casually opening the fridge. Once she's gone, it's all ours. Kendra's got plans for the yard already. The friend chuckled. You serious? Dead serious. You don't think I jumped through all this paperwork for fun, do you? People die in Bakersfield heat all the time. Joyce sat up in bed, her jaw clenched tight. She let the recorder run for 2 more minutes before switching it off. The air in the room felt heavier now, but not from the heat, from clarity. That night, with the house dark and silent, she opened the same notebook where she'd logged her heat stroke, the overdraft, and the missing card. At the top of a new page, she wrote a single sentence. Tomorrow I remove them from the will. Then she underlined it. Twice. The pen didn't shake in Joyce's hand. Not even once. It moved smoothly across the thick parchment paper as if her fingers had been waiting their whole life to write this moment. Dale sat across from her, quietly placing each page of the revised will into a leather-bound folder. The air-conditioned silence of his office broken only by the whisper of documents being sealed. She signed the last page. Dale met her gaze. It's done. Joyce exhaled slowly, then leaned back in her chair. Her chest felt lighter, not from relief, but resolve. No room for interpretation? He shook his head. Not unless they want to challenge it and eat legal fees for breakfast. We've got notarized copies, archived timestamps, and recordings to back everything up. The no contest clause ensures that if they fight this, they get nothing, not even a sock drawer. Good, Joyce said. Then let's move on to the trust. The new living trust named only one beneficiary, Melody Latham, granddaughter, age 15. The trust would be locked until Melody turned 21 and only accessible if she enrolled in either a college or a certified trade program. No loopholes, no parent proxies, no early access. Melody would be free to use the funds for her future, not Ethan and Kendra's present. As for the house, Joyce tapped the deed with a steady hand. This place was always meant to be more than walls. If it's not for family, then let it be for women who don't have one. Dale nodded. I have a contact at Central Valley Shelter Network. We can file a conditional deed, transfer that activates upon death. It'll bypass probate and land right in their lap. Perfect. By the time the sun hit its peak in Bakersfield, Dale had notarized the entire estate plan, filed an electronic backup with the county, and prepared the restraining clause, an enforceable legal document citing elder exploitation statutes, complete with a breakdown of all Joyce's supporting evidence, the audio recordings, the altered deed, the debit card activity. He glanced up from the final printout. You understand what this does, right? Joyce adjusted the collar of her blouse. Yes. It may provoke him. He already is. Rhonda met Joyce outside Dale's office with a bottle of water and her signature stare. Well, she asked, squinting under her visor. Joyce smiled faintly. The will's rewritten, and this time it's bulletproof. Rhonda handed her the water, then added under her breath, You're not paranoid. You're prepared. That night, the house was too quiet. Even the refrigerator seemed to hum in anticipation. Joyce moved through the kitchen with deliberate grace, her limbs still sore from the stress of the last few days. She opened the cabinet, reached for her tea tins, and noticed something strange. The debit card envelope she usually kept in the drawer was gone. She paused, then walked to her room, opened her nightstand. Nothing. Her breathing slowed. Her fingers curled tight. She pulled out the emergency envelope Dale had given her. New debit card, new bank account, completely disconnected from the one Ethan still believed was active. She picked up her phone and opened her banking app. Balance, $2,447.92. No recent transactions. Then she logged into the old account, the one Ethan still thought was live. Balance, $0.00. Card declined. Joyce stared at the screen, unmoving. Down the hallway, she heard a faint, irritated voice. What the hell? She changed the damn PIN again. A pause. Then Kendra's voice, sharp and agitated. Try it online? Maybe she just froze it. No, it's locked. It says to contact the bank. I was just trying to order gas for the truck. Joyce placed her phone gently on the nightstand and turned off the lamp beside her. The room fell into quiet darkness, a welcome contrast to the muffled chaos trickling down the hallway. It had begun, and this time she held the match. The silence in Dale's office was a welcome reprieve from the chaos brewing at home. Joyce watched as he slid the new debit card across the desk toward her, its surface still gleaming in the fluorescent light. Separate bank, fully private, online access only through your personal device. You're the sole owner, Dale said. Joyce nodded, sliding the card into her purse with deliberate calm. No one else touches this. All automatic payments are being transferred over. I've already submitted the new routing info to your utility providers. Give it 72 hours. Tops. And Social Security? Already on hold, he said, turning his laptop screen so she could see the queue timer ticking down. Once they verify your ID, we'll have your monthly deposits rerouted to the new account, and all paper statements forwarded to my P.O. box until you say otherwise. She exhaled, a slow, centered breath. For the first time in weeks, something felt hers. Back home, the air inside the house felt heavier, like it was trying to warn her. Ethan's boots were by the door, caked in dry mud from his job site, and the smell of reheated fish lingered bitterly in the kitchen. He stood near the sink when she entered, arms crossed, face tight. "You cancel something." Joyce didn't stop walking. "What do you mean?" "My card was declined trying to refill the truck, and our internet bill just bounced." She set her bag on the table, then faced him. "You shouldn't be using my accounts anymore." His eyes narrowed. "You don't trust your own son?" Joyce tilted her head. "I trust my records." For a second, Ethan looked like he might throw the glass in his hand. Instead, he stormed past her and stomped down the hall. She waited until the front door slammed behind him before calling the Social Security office back to confirm her direct deposit change. The clerk on the other end sounded cheerful. "All right, Ms. Latham. Your benefits will post to the new account starting next cycle. Anything else I can assist with today?" "Yes," Joyce said. "Can you also stop sending mail to my home? I'd like all correspondence rerouted to my legal contact." "Certainly." By the next morning, her name was wiped clean from every place Ethan had ever tangled it. Cell bill, insurance, even the monthly donation Joyce made in her husband's memory. All of it, hers again. But the house was colder, more hostile. Later that afternoon, Joyce opened the fridge to find her arthritis medication missing from its usual basket. The tray had been dumped, its contents scattered between old ketchup packets and a leaking tub of yogurt. "Kendra," Joyce called out, trying to keep her tone even. From the living room, Kendra responded without even standing. "Oh, I tossed that. You had too much junk crowding the fridge. Half of it was expired anyway." "That wasn't junk," Joyce said, moving to the doorway. "That was prescription medication." Kendra gave a dismissive shrug, remote in hand. "You could have fooled me. We're trying to keep the house organized. Everyone needs to make sacrifices." Joyce didn't answer. She went to her bedroom and locked the door. Then she pulled out her medication log and wrote down every dose missed, every pill thrown out. That night, Joyce moved like a ghost through the hallway, her slippers making no sound as she approached the closed door to the den. Ethan's voice filtered through, low, irritated. "She's starting to dig in," he whispered. "She's not gonna last much longer," Kendra replied. "The heat, the stress, it'll tip her over. We should start talking to Adult Protective Services, get ahead of it." There was a beat of silence, then Kendra's voice sharpened. "She doesn't need to be here anymore, not if we're going to get our lives back." Joyce stood in the shadows, unseen. Her fingers curled tight around her robe belt, nails digging into her palm. They weren't just careless anymore. They were plotting, and they thought she wouldn't hear. Let them whisper. She was done listening. Now she'd start preparing. Joyce stood in the dark, the glow from the hallway casting a thin stripe across the floor. Her phone, face down on the carpet just outside the den, recorded everything through a cracked case and years of practiced silence. She didn't need to lean closer. Ethan's voice carried like oil over water. "If she slips up just once, we call Adult Protective Services. All we need is one incident." Kendra responded with the sharp rustle of a chip bag. "Like what? Forgetting to turn off the stove? Wandering off during errands?" Ethan laughed, cold and flat. "Even if we fake concern, they'll investigate. And once APS is in, she's out." Joyce pressed her fingers against the door frame, her pulse humming in her ears. She didn't flinch. She didn't interrupt. She just waited until the conversation drifted into silence, then tiptoed back to her room and hit save on the voice recorder app. Morning light barely kissed the blinds before Joyce called Dale. "I need to schedule an evaluation," she said. Dale didn't hesitate. "Psychological and physical, independent. I want everything documented." 2 days later, Joyce sat in the exam room of a quiet private clinic downtown, the paper sheet beneath her crackling with each shift. Her hands ached from the arthritis, but her mind was sharp as a tack. The evaluator, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a clipboard, ran through the cognitive tests like she was chatting over tea. Count backward from 100 by sevens, she asked. Joyce didn't pause. 93, 86, 79. The physical checkup took longer. Blood pressure, reflexes, balance. When Joyce stepped off the low stool with only the briefest wince, the nurse raised an eyebrow. You're stronger than you look, Joyce smiled faintly. Looks can lie. The report was mailed directly to Dale. He called her that evening. You passed every marker, Joyce. No signs of cognitive decline, physical vulnerability, or instability. This report protects you in every legal context. Good, she replied. Then let's not waste time. By the end of the week, Dale filed a preemptive protection motion in probate court. The packet included the evaluation, the voice recording, and a detailed account of financial exploitation, asset control, and prescription interference. This move, Dale said, tapping the final page, makes them look like the aggressors. We're not waiting for an attack. We're already in the fight. Joyce took a deep breath. That's where they made their mistake. They thought I was too tired to swing back. Later that night, Joyce went to grab her reading glasses from her purse. Tucked inside the side pocket was a folded napkin, the kind from Melody's favorite burrito stand. Scrawled across it in looping purple ink was a message. I'm so sorry they're like this. Please don't give up. Murquhart. Joyce traced the letters with her thumb. The ink had smudged slightly, like it was written in a hurry, or with hands that were shaking. She didn't cry, but her chest pulled tight in that deep, silent way only a grandmother could understand. The next morning, while Ethan noisily searched for his boots, Joyce sat calmly on the couch, sipping her tea. The knock at the door came like a bell toll, measured, exact, impossible to ignore. Ethan swung the door open, confused. A man in a tan blazer stood on the porch, a plain envelope in hand. Ethan Latham? Yeah? You've been served. Legal summons. Your court date's listed inside. Ethan blinked at the envelope like it had teeth. What is this? Probate court filing, the man replied. Respond by the listed deadline. He turned and walked back to his sedan without another word. Ethan slammed the door. What the hell is going on? Joyce stirred her tea. You wanted a slip-up. I gave you paperwork instead. The hum of the courthouse air conditioner couldn't drown out the weight in Joyce's chest as she sat beside Dale. Outside, Bakersfield's relentless sun hammered the concrete, but inside courtroom 2B, the real heat was about to begin. Dale stood with practiced calm and addressed the clerk. Petition to reverse title fraud. Our client, Ms. Joyce Latham, has lived at the contested property for 35 years. Her son filed a new deed without proper authorization. We have notarized originals, audio evidence, and a certified medical report attesting to her current mental competency. Joyce didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her story was in the paper trail. Behind them, Ethan sat slouched with a clipboard and a court-appointed attorney who looked like he'd met his client 5 minutes ago. His jaw ticked with irritation. Kendra wasn't there. Joyce imagined she didn't want to be photographed next to a fraud hearing. The clerk stamped the motion and nodded. Accepted. The case will move to preliminary hearing. Outside, Joyce exhaled slowly on the courthouse steps. Now it's real, Dale said, shielding his eyes from the sun. They can't touch your house while this is pending. They can't sell it, rent it, or refinance it. And they'll have to answer for how they got the title changed. Joyce didn't smile, but her voice had a steadiness she hadn't felt in weeks. Good. Back home, Ethan came storming through the door. You really went to court over this. Joyce didn't answer. She was in the kitchen, labeling the medication Kendra had once thrown away. Every bottle stored neatly in a locked plastic bin Rhonda had brought over. You think that house is all yours? He snapped. Joyce looked up. I bought it. I paid the taxes. I signed the original deed. Yes, I do. He slammed his fist on the counter. I've been covering maintenance, utilities, repairs. That counts for something. Not in probate court, it doesn't, she said, her voice unshaken. He stared at her like he couldn't quite believe it. Then, like a switch flipping, he scowled and walked off. 15 minutes later, Joyce heard the car peel out of the driveway. The next day, Dale called. Ethan's attempting a countersuit. He's filing for housing contribution reimbursement. Says you've been living off him rent-free. Joyce snorted. He lives in my house. The judge will likely throw it out. You've got title history going back decades, and he's only lived there the last 6 years. Still, we'll prepare a rebuttal just in case. Sure enough, at the brief counter-motion hearing, the judge barely glanced at Ethan's complaint before dismissing it. Petitioner has owned this property since 1988, Judge Yanez said, tapping the stack of documents Dale had submitted. There is no legal claim to reimbursement. Back at home, Rhonda met Joyce at the side gate with a shopping bag and a tight smile. Security cameras, she said, lifting the bag. One for the front porch, one for the hallway. They're easy. Just plug them in and download the app. Joyce paused. You really think it's come to this? Rhonda didn't blink. I think it came to this the moment they tried to erase you from your own deed. That night, Joyce stood in the front yard, the scent of dry weeds and sun-baked concrete heavy in the air, and watched the soft red light of the porch camera flick on. A quiet sentinel. No more whispered threats. No more trespasses unnoticed. Just before midnight, her phone buzzed. A message from Melody, no text. Just a single photo taken discreetly from her phone. It showed a spreadsheet printed in bold black ink, lying on Ethan's workbench. At the top, retirement plan, Latham House equity. Below it, projected values, timeline estimates, and possible HELOC options. Joyce stared at the screen for a long moment. He wasn't just waiting for her to slip up. He was already spending her life before she'd even lived the rest of it. The courtroom was ice cold, but Joyce's palms were sweating. Not from nerves, from memory. She could still feel the hot press of vinyl car seats against her legs, the way her blouse had clung to her damp skin. That moment in the parked car had ignited something she'd never let die. Dale stood, his voice calm but razor sharp. Your Honor, the petitioner has submitted new evidence, a document titled Retirement Plan, drafted by the respondent, Mr. Ethan Latham. It outlines projected equity withdrawals from the home belonging to Ms. Joyce Latham, still living, and states, quote, expected liquidation of asset within 18 months. He held up a copy of the spreadsheet, Melody's photo, now printed and notarized. Joyce sat still, shoulders straight, expression neutral, but her heart pounded behind her ribs like a war drum. Judge Yanez, a woman with a reputation for biting through legal fog, lifted her reading glasses and studied the page. Mr. Latham, she said slowly, would you care to explain why you've created a financial plan built on an asset you do not legally own, and which is currently the subject of a fraud motion? Ethan's face twitched. That's not what it looks like. The judge arched an eyebrow. It looks like you were planning your retirement around the future death of your mother. Murmurs rippled across the gallery. Ethan stood abruptly. That's not fair. I've been taking care of her, driving her around, making sure she eats. You left her locked in a car during a heat wave, Dale cut in. She was rescued by a stranger and treated for heat stroke. And we have audio recordings of you minimizing the incident. Are we really going to act like she's in her right mind? Ethan barked. She doesn't even know how to use the TV remote. Joyce didn't flinch. She looked up and said clearly, he locked me into sweat. I unlocked the truth. The judge looked back at Ethan. Mr. Latham, I suggest you control your tone unless you want to be held in contempt. Ethan's jaw worked like he was chewing glass. Kendra, seated behind him, crossed her arms and stared at the floor. Dale returned to his seat beside Joyce. Under the table, she felt his hand tap lightly against her elbow. Not patronizing, just present, just steady. The judge made brief notes and then addressed both sides. This case will be continued for ruling. In the meantime, I'm inclined to protect Ms. Latham's interests. Mr. Ortiz, you may file a motion for emergency safety measures. Dale stood again. We already have, Your Honor. Good, she said. Motion granted. Temporary no-contact order issued until next session. This court does not reward financial predation. Dismissed for now. Outside the courtroom, Ethan slammed the double doors with a curse that echoed through the marble hallway. Joyce didn't turn to watch. She adjusted her cardigan and walked out slowly, each step deliberate. By the time she reached the sidewalk, Dale was already on the phone with his paralegal, instructing her to file for a longer-term protection order. I'll arrange for one of our clerks to deliver a hard copy of the ruling when it's issued, he told Joyce. You won't need to come back unless you want to. Joyce nodded, too tired to answer. Later that night, as Rhonda made tea in Joyce's kitchen, the air thick with chamomile and exhaustion, Melody knocked on the back door. Soft 3 times. Joyce opened it to find her granddaughter clutching her phone, eyes wide. She's doing it, Melody whispered. Kendra's calling Adult Protective Services. She's saying you're confused and unstable and a danger to yourself. She thinks if you're declared incompetent, Dad can reverse everything. Joyce didn't respond. She didn't need to. She walked over to the hallway shelf, pulled out her folder labeled Mental Fitness, confirmed, and placed it on the kitchen table. Then she reached beneath the cabinet, flicked a switch on the security camera DVR, and calmly hit record. The knock came at 9:13 a.m., 3 hard raps against the screen door. Joyce paused mid-prune in the backyard, her garden gloves still damp from dew and rosemary sap. Rhonda looked up from her spot by the compost bin and whispered, "That's not the mailman." Joyce peeled off her gloves and opened the door. A middle-aged woman in a blue blouse and black slacks stood with a clipboard tucked under one arm and a badge clipped to her belt. Ms. Latham, I'm Camille Rodriguez with Adult Protective Services. We received a call regarding potential neglect and cognitive instability. Do you have a moment? Joyce stepped aside without flinching. Of course, come in. Would you like iced tea or documentation first? Camille's eyes narrowed slightly, curious but neutral. Let's start with documents. Inside, Joyce moved like she had rehearsed it. Because she had. Rhonda had run drills with her twice a week since Dale first warned her about the possibility of this visit. She led Camille to the dining table already cleared, a leather-bound binder waiting in the center like a closing argument. I've labeled everything, Joyce said, flipping open the tabs. Medical records, psychological clearance, prescription history, caregiver contacts, daily schedule, emergency contacts, and a log of incidents. Camille blinked. You compiled all this yourself? Yes, I was a public librarian for 32 years. I take record-keeping seriously. For the next hour, Camille reviewed the documentation, while Joyce answered each question clearly and precisely. No fumbling, no blank stares. When asked what day it was, Joyce didn't just respond with the date. She added the weather and which grocery flyer came in that morning's mail. Camille requested to walk through the home. Joyce obliged, narrating as they passed each room. The accessible shower bars, her organized medication box with labeled timestamps, the fresh groceries in the fridge. Nothing was out of place except the faint scratch marks on the kitchen drawer, where Kendra had once yanked it open during an argument. And you live here alone? Camille asked. Joyce gave a polite smile. By choice. My son and daughter-in-law live 5 minutes away, but they haven't stepped foot inside since the preliminary court motion. As if on cue, the front door creaked open softly, and Melody's voice called out, "Grandma?" Camille turned, surprised. "You have visitors?" "Just family," Joyce replied. Melody stepped in, school bag slung over one shoulder. She paused when she saw Camille, then slowly approached. "I'm her granddaughter," she said softly. "Is this about the report?" "Yes," Camille said, cautious. "Would you like to speak privately?" Joyce nodded. "You can use the den. Melody, it's up to you." They left, and the door shut behind them. 15 minutes passed before Camille returned to the kitchen. Her expression had changed, The kind of shift that happens when a puzzle clicks into place. She told me the truth, Camille said. About the debit card, about the yelling, about the car. Joyce inhaled slowly, steadying her voice. I never wanted to involve her. I believe that, Camille replied. I found no signs of neglect or diminished capacity. Quite the opposite. You're one of the most organized individuals I've evaluated this year. Joyce gave a modest shrug. It helps when survival is on the to-do list. Camille tucked her papers away. We'll be closing the case in your favor. Additionally, due to what Melody shared, we're flagging Mr. Latham's file for internal review regarding financial coercion. You may be contacted again, but not as a respondent. When the door finally shut behind Camille, Joyce let out the breath she'd been holding for nearly 90 minutes. That afternoon, Dale dropped by to check in. Joyce handed him a USB with backups of all the APS documents. I want the trust lock tighter, she said. No withdrawals, no access, not even a phone inquiry. Done, Dale said. You passed the test. Now let's make sure they never get to take it again. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the smog-drenched skyline of Bakersfield, Rhonda brought over a fresh basket of lemons. The air was warm, but not suffocating. Joyce sat on the porch, staring at the mailbox, the one that still had her name on it. Inside, her phone vibrated, a calendar alert, court date confirmed. July 18th, 10 a.m. Final ruling. The courtroom air felt unnaturally still, thick with tension and old carpet fibers, humming faintly under the fluorescence. Joyce's cane tapped once against the wood floor as she approached the witness stand. Every step carried decades of silence she had once mistaken for peace. Dale helped her settle into the chair, his hand light at her elbow, grounding her but not guiding her. She faced the judge, then the courtroom, then Ethan. He stared back with a smirk that tried and failed to look harmless. Kendra, seated beside him in her overly pressed blouse and sour expression, didn't look up. The bailiff asked her to raise her right hand. I do, she said, voice faint but clear. The first words trembled out of her like a bird leaving a locked cage, wings thin but determined. My name is Joyce Latham. I'm 72 years old. And lastly, month, my only son left me in a locked vehicle in 104-degree heat for nearly 30 minutes. A stir moved through the gallery like wind through dry brush. Someone's pen clicked. Someone else stopped typing. My chest was tight. My hands were slick. I remember thinking, this is how dogs die, she continued, a hint of steel building behind the words. A stranger had to break the window. Ethan returned with a milkshake. No apology. Dale stood slowly beside the media cart. Your Honor, with the court's permission. Judge Monroe gave a single nod. Dale pressed play. The courtroom filled with Ethan's voice, distorted slightly by the recorder's tinny mic, but unmistakably smug. She'll be fine. She's just being dramatic. It's only a little heat. Gives her something to complain about. Then came laughter. Ethan's, followed by the sound of a drive-through intercom. Joyce sat motionless, hands folded in her lap. Kendra shifted uneasily in her chair. The audio kept rolling. Another clip. Ethan again, this time in the kitchen. Unaware Joyce's recorder sat tucked in the cookie jar. Soon as she croaks, we list the house. Market's hot. We could flip it and buy something with a pool. The judge's jaw stiffened. Dale paused the playback. And the deed transfer? Monroe asked. Dale presented the forged document, side by side with Joyce's original notarized title. He forged her signature. We've submitted expert handwriting analysis, date discrepancies, and testimony from the notary Joyce had used for over 15 years. The judge turned to Joyce. Would you like to say anything else? Joyce exhaled once. Steady now. My son drained my account. He mocked my health. He used my name to buy patio furniture for his wife's boutique launch. And he laughed while I nearly passed out in a sealed car. But he didn't break me. He made me pay attention. She turned slightly, locking eyes with Ethan. I raised a boy who believes love is transactional. That caregiving is currency. I see that now. Ethan stood abruptly. She's just mad because we called her out. She lies when she's not getting her way. Sit down, Mr. Latham, the judge barked, voice thunderous now. Kendra muttered something under her breath and rose without a word. Her heels echoed against the tiles as she walked out, not even pausing to look back at Ethan. The door clicked closed behind her. Joyce remained still, the courtroom hushed around her. Judge Monroe straightened his stack of papers, then looked up. In light of the evidence presented, audio recordings, documentation, and the clear testimony from Ms. Latham, I am ruling in her favor. The property deed will be restored immediately. All unauthorized charges from Mr. Latham's use of Ms. Latham's account are to be repaid in full within 60 days. Control of Miss Latham's estate is returned solely to her. Ethan slumped back, pale now. Dale placed a hand on Joyce's shoulder. It's done, he whispered. But Joyce didn't smile. She simply nodded, eyes forward, because she knew what was coming next, and she wasn't done yet. Joyce sat in the courtroom's stiff-backed chair, spine straight, breath measured. The sun beat gently through the high windows, its warmth a far cry from the suffocating heat she'd once endured, trapped in Ethan's car. She didn't flinch as Judge Monroe returned with his ruling in hand. She had already faced the worst parts of her life and survived them. This moment, whatever it was, could only be easier. After reviewing the evidence, the judge began, voice firm and even. This court finds the deed transfer to be fraudulent. Full ownership of the home located at 312 Oakberry Lane is hereby reinstated to Miss Joyce Latham. A collective breath left the room. Dale nodded once beside her, his pen still but ready. Monroe wasn't done. Furthermore, Mr. Ethan Latham is ordered to repay a total of $3,472 in unauthorized debit card transactions, to be completed within 60 days. A formal restraining order is granted in accordance with California's elder protection statutes. Mr. Latham is to remain no less than 200 feet from Ms. Latham's property and place of residence. Ethan exhaled hard, a mix of disbelief and growing rage. His jaw shifted, grinding something he couldn't say out loud. And the judge continued. The trust fund established in Melody Latham's name remains intact and protected. Mr. and Mrs. Latham are to have no financial access or advisory input regarding the trust. Joyce blinked. Once. That clause had meant the most to her, even more than reclaiming her home. From the back of the gallery, a quiet clap began. A woman in a lavender cardigan, gray hair clipped up neatly, gave Joyce a small nod. Another elder, perhaps, one who understood. Dale whispered, "They're going to talk about this case for years." Joyce's hands rested in her lap. She didn't smile, not yet. Not while Ethan still sat behind her, fuming in his crumpled polo, tapping his knee, a muscle twitching in his cheek. The bailiff stepped toward him. "This ruling is garbage," Ethan muttered under his breath, loud enough for the front row to hear. "She's senile. She's just playing victim." The bailiff raised an eyebrow. "Sir?" Ethan stood abruptly. "She'll regret this. I gave up my weekends for her, my life." But the judge had already stood and exited through the side door. This court had no more room for Ethan's entitlement. Joyce gathered her bag slowly. Her cane tapped once, then twice on the floor as she rose. Dale held the door. Behind her, Kendra remained seated, staring into her lap. Her hands were clenched tight around her purse strap. The wedding ring on her finger turned inward, digging into her skin. Outside the courtroom, the air was sweet with late-season blossoms and hot concrete. Rhonda stood waiting at the bottom of the steps, wearing her usual oversized sunglasses and holding a manila folder under one arm. "Well?" she asked. Joyce didn't speak. She handed Rhonda the final ruling. Rhonda scanned the page, then let out a satisfied whistle. "Now that's justice." They embraced briefly. No tears, no dramatics. Just two women who knew how much effort it took to hold a line that others kept crossing. As they walked toward Dale's car, Joyce noticed her phone buzzing. A message from Melody. "I'm so proud of you." But it was Dale's phone that rang loudest. A crisp ringtone cutting through the afternoon quiet. He answered, murmured something, then looked at Joyce. That was a reporter from the Bakersfield Ledger. They want to do a piece on elder financial abuse. Joyce raised an eyebrow. Not interested in headlines. Not for the paper, he clarified. For the judge. She nodded. Let them come. I have records. They continued toward the car, but Dale's phone buzzed again. He checked it, face hardening. What is it? Joyce asked. Dale exhaled slowly. Ethan's employer just received the court documents through public record. He's been placed on unpaid leave, pending review. Joyce didn't stop walking, didn't turn around. Good, she said, almost to herself. Let him sweat. The day Joyce finalized the transfer to Melody's college account, the late summer sun filtered through the blinds in golden stripes. Dale handed her the confirmation packet with a half smile. It was a simple document, legal, sterile, but to Joyce, it pulsed with hope. Melody would start adulthood free of Ethan's weight. She would walk into her future with her own keys. I didn't want her to think love came with strings, Joyce murmured, placing the folder gently into her purse. So I tied none. She'll remember this, Dale said, locking his briefcase. She already does. The very next morning, Joyce wrote a check to a small but underfunded nonprofit just 2 blocks from the courthouse, a place she'd once passed without noticing. The organization specialized in elder advocacy, mostly volunteers and 2 overworked caseworkers. The director, a woman named Rena, had blinked twice when she saw the amount. You meant to write 700, right? Rena asked. Joyce met her gaze, calm as glass. Number I meant 70,000. And I'm not done. She didn't want fanfare. But they gave her a plaque anyway, on the door of a new division she personally launched, Sunshade, a 24-hour hotline for heat-related elder abuse. The logo was simple, a tree, a long shadow, a quiet place to rest. By the end of the week, the Bakersfield Ledger ran the story. Locked in but not out, retired librarian turns abuse into action. The photo showed Joyce on her front porch bench, back straight, hands folded. Rhonda stood behind her, arms crossed like a sentinel. Comments flooded in. Former caregivers, nurses, even younger people with aging parents applauded the move. But below the kuwai, applause were other ripples. The Ledger didn't pull punches. They published parts of the court transcripts. Ethan's quote, "She's a placeholder until we can flip it," was highlighted in bold. Joyce didn't look at Ethan's social media, but Melody did. She showed her screenshots. Ethan's business page had been flooded with negative reviews, several mentioning his treatment of Joyce. His employer made the suspension permanent. Kendra's boutique lost sponsors, and by the end of the month, her separation papers were filed, complete with a restraining order. Joyce never said, "I told you so." She didn't need to. Sometimes justice didn't knock. It dismantled doors. She walked down to the park that Saturday morning with Rhonda, a paper bag in hand and her old cane tapping gently on the sidewalk. The air smelled of cut grass and soil. Near the garden where her husband once volunteered, Joyce found the concrete slab. The city had poured it 2 weeks earlier, just waiting for a name. From the bag, Joyce pulled out a brass plaque. Rhonda helped her screw it in. In loving memory of Walter Latham. You were the cool shade in my summer. She ran her fingers across the letters, then sat down. The bench creaked, sun-warmed and familiar. Rhonda didn't speak. She just stood nearby, offering company the way Joyce liked best. Quiet, steady, unflinching. By the following Wednesday, Joyce had finished updating her estate papers. Dale notarized everything, and Melody stopped by that evening with a small envelope of her own. School pamphlets, mostly. Colleges she dared to look at again. Joyce offered iced tea, and Melody took it with both hands. Her cheeks were flushed with the kind of emotion teenagers hate showing. I don't want to live there anymore, Melody said suddenly. the words tumbling out like they'd been pressing against her chest for days. I want to live here, with you, if you'll let me. Joyce's hand didn't tremble as she set down her tea, but her throat caught, just once. Are you sure? She asked gently. Melody nodded. They made me feel like kindness was weakness. You made me realize it's the opposite. Joyce didn't answer right away. She simply reached across the table and squeezed her granddaughter's hand. Then let's clear out the guest room, she said softly. You've got a lot of growing to do, and it's better with roots. Melody smiled, this time without hesitation, and the porch light flicked on behind them, casting them both in its warm, unwavering glow. The sun had begun its slow descent over Bakersfield, casting amber streaks across the backyard, where Joyce knelt in the garden bed. The soil was dry but forgiving, and her gloved fingers dug with patient intention. Melody sat nearby with a notebook in her lap, pen tapping thoughtfully. The girl was quieter now, not out of fear, but of newfound peace. Their rhythms were soft, deliberate, watering. Tomatoes, pruning rosemary, scribbling memories. Joyce wiped her brow with the edge of her sleeve and smiled at the scent of damp earth and crushed mint. This is better medicine than anything that ever came in a bottle, she murmured. Melody looked up. What should I call this entry? Joyce leaned back on her heels. Call it a soft beginning. Those are the hardest kind to earn. Inside, the house had transformed. The tension that once haunted every creaking floorboard had evaporated. No slammed doors, no shouted demands. Just the tick of the wall clock and the occasional chirp from the radio. Melody helped Joyce update the pantry labels. They cooked together now, simple things like lemon chicken or grilled cheese with tomato soup, and ate at the table like two souls who'd decided not to rush anything ever again. Joyce breathed differently now, deeper, slower. Her lungs felt less like cages and more like bellows, alive, expanding. Even her doctor noticed the change, nodding as he examined her and saying, "You've got more spring in your step, Mrs. Latham." It wasn't youth, she thought. It was relief. One afternoon, Dale stopped by with a stack of final estate documents. He sat at the dining table, reading glasses perched at the end of his nose, and handed Joyce the last folder to sign. Everything's in place now, he said. Living trust, will, powers of attorney, Melody's guardianship, if ever needed. You've got it all locked tight. Joyce signed, firm but graceful, then looked at him. I don't want her to carry the weight I did. She won't, Dale assured. You carried enough for 3 lifetimes. Later that week, Rhonda arrived with a brown bag full of fresh peaches and a wild look in her eyes. You are not going to believe who just got booted from the community HOA board, she said, fanning herself. Kendra. Apparently she tried to pitch a spiritual wellness corner, which turned out to be a product plug. They nearly voted her out mid-meeting. Joyce laughed for the first time that day, the sound light and full. Some people never change, she said, taking a peach and biting in. Juice ran down her fingers, sweet and sticky. They sat on the porch for a while, watching Melody sketch in a pad on the lawn. The air buzzed gently with cicadas, and somewhere a neighbor's sprinkler hissed to life. Joyce sighed, content. You've earned this quiet, Rhonda said. Joyce nodded. Some doors, she said thoughtfully, are meant to stay locked. The next morning, a white envelope was tucked between the utility bill and the grocery circular in her mailbox. No return address. Just her name in Ethan's handwriting, sloppy, rushed, but unmistakable. She held it in her hands for a long moment before bringing it inside. Melody wasn't home. She'd started volunteering 2 afternoons a week at the Sunshade Hotline Center. Joyce poured herself a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table. Her palms were dry, steady. She opened the letter slowly, eyes scanning each word as if examining them under glass. Mom, I didn't mean for it to go this far. I lost my job. Kendra left. I'm not asking for money, just... I'm sorry for the car, the yelling, everything. I don't know what else to say. It wasn't much. No apology could fully cover what had been done, but it was more than she expected. Still, the paper trembled slightly as she folded it again, sliding it into a folder marked simply, done. Outside, the garden waited. Melody would be home soon. There were tomatoes to harvest and a new journal entry to write. Sunlight filtered across the kitchen floor, pooling at her feet as Melody burst through the front door. Still in her graduation robes, cheeks flushed and beaming. "Grandma," she called, holding up the rolled diploma with both hands. Guess who gave the closing speech? Joyce pushed up from her chair, her joints creaking, but her smile quick. "You did?" "Third in the class," Melody said, and dropped into her grandmother's embrace, the tassel swaying against Joyce's cheek. Later that night, they celebrated with peach pie and too much laughter. Rhonda brought over sparkling cider and a stack of paper hats. The kitchen echoed with a kind of joy that couldn't be manufactured, only earned the hard way. No one mentioned Ethan. No one needed to. That summer, the Sunshade program became more than a hotline. With Dale's legal contacts and Joyce's persistence, it expanded into a pilot advocacy team. Volunteers who did welfare checks, court escorts, and hotline translations. They printed handouts in 5 languages. They ran seminars at the community center. They saved lives. One Friday afternoon, a woman no older than Melody knocked on Joyce's door, her own grandmother standing beside her. "I just wanted to say thank you," the girl said shyly. "Your story it was ours, until it wasn't." Joyce didn't cry in front of them, but after they left, she walked to her garden and let the silence surround her, warm and gentle. She knelt near the rosemary bush and let her fingers run through the leaves, crushing the scent into her palms. Weeks later, she updated her will again. This time, the language was simpler, sharper. One sentence stood out like a blade. "To those who gave love, not just blood." She left Melody the house, of course, not to own, but to choose. Live in it, rent it, sell it. It would be her decision. No hands hovering over her shoulder, no threats disguised as help. The framed photo near the hallway caught the morning light just right. It showed Joyce standing outside the courthouse beside Dale, her hand mid-wave, chin raised. Her blouse was slightly wrinkled. Her eyes were not. Underneath, a small plaque read, "When silence failed, she testified." Joyce added one last picture to the wall, Melody in her graduation cap, grinning, her arms slung around Rhonda like they'd known each other for lifetimes. One morning, Joyce woke to find a sticky note on the fridge. Melody had written, "Early shift at Sunshade. Water the tomatoes for me?" Joyce smiled and tucked the note into the same drawer where the letter from Ethan lived. She never opened that folder again. The final days of summer came soft and orange-tinted, warm but no longer dangerous. The house had changed, or maybe Joyce had. She no longer flinched at car engines or the sound of keys turning in locks. She took her walks in the early evening, wearing Melody's old earbuds, listening to piano music and the distant hum of crickets. A neighbor's child once asked, "Why don't you talk to your son?" Joyce answered without pause, without anger. Because some doors, once closed, should never be opened again. And she meant it, not with bitterness, with peace. She'd once been locked in a car on a day so hot the air shimmered like water. She'd nearly died for the sake of someone else's comfort. Now, years later, she lived entirely on her own terms. "My son locked me in the car parked in the sun, so I locked him out forever."